So yeah, my name is Michael Mealing. I'm one of the general partners at Starbridge Venture Capital. We are a early stage space focused venture fund, been around since late 2017. We are closing our second fund tomorrow. And we are currently, our net IRR on fund one is about 72% and could be as high as 107% by the end of next month. That's because, as Marty said, this sector is very hot, very interesting, and growing faster than even us industry professionals can keep track of on a daily basis. A perfect example is if you look around on for SpaceX and the progress that they have been making down in their facility in Boca Chica. They've assembled a very large rocket, actually the largest rocket ever built, in what looks like the span of about 2.5 weeks. They've been a lot of work on the back end, but things are moving quickly enough, it's hard to keep track. The reason that the sector is doing this, for those that are wondering, why is this thing a thing now and not something that happened after Apollo or after Shuttle? It really goes back to some legal changes that Congress enacted back in 2004 that really clarified whether or not commercial companies could launch their own rockets for commercial customers. That was clarified in something called the Commercial Space Launch Amendments Act. It's roughly equivalent to the legal changes around the internet in about 1993, clarifying that you could use the internet for commercial use. And since then, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and a lot of other companies have decided to take advantage of that. And that's where we're at today. It only became venture investable really around 2016, 2017. And that's when the number of companies that were investable became sufficiently large that you needed a venture fund to be able to do that. Now there are about 4 of us out there. Space Capital, Space Fund, and Seraphim Capital out of the UK. And we're all focused on slightly different sections of the market. We come in a little bit later than seed. We like to see proof of product market fit. And that is one of the biggest challenges we see in the space sector. We have a lot of engineering-led companies that are looking out beyond low Earth orbit into doing things on the moon and beyond that simply don't have customers yet other than NASA. And even sometimes it's questionable about whether or not NASA can do it in a reasonable time frame. So we look very hard at who the customers are. We're very interested in who the customers' customers are, because there are even some customers out there that are looking too far ahead in what's possible. So there's a lot of speculation about where the sector is going, but you really do have to pay attention to the downstream demand far more than you do have to pay attention to the technology. There's very little technology in the space sector that is new. Much of it was discovered back during the Apollo era. What really happens now is, can you make a business out of it? And that's where we're all at. So one of the things that we tell people that are looking at investing in the space sector, do your due diligence. If you see that the leadership of a company is heavily engineering focused, do some extra due diligence. If you have questions, drop me an email. Even if you're not an investor, I would rather help you do your due diligence than make a bad decision.
Great. I'm still hunting down Jamil, but can we get Darrell Gunter to introduce himself? Darrell.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, hello there. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having me on the program. My name is Darrell Gunter, and I'm President and CEO of Gunter Media Group. We are a strategic management advisory firm specializing in product ideation around AI and blockchain. We just published our what we like to call our edited volume, Transforming Scholarly Research with Blockchain and AI. And in my part-time, I also have a radio show podcast called Leadership with Darrell Gunter on WSOU 89.5 FM on Seton Hall Radio. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to a great discussion. I love to talk about space.
Great. So why don't you guys go back and forth and talk about space and where it is going? And also, if there are applications of AI and machine learning, I think there's probably a lot more variables to collect once you're in space. You know, I was told once from a big data point of view that there's more data in airplane engines than they know what to do with, and they're collecting all that data on how they function, the type of air that goes through them, the wind velocity, et cetera. And I'm wondering if there's the same kind of collection of data with these space launches, or if there's even more data. So maybe you can talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, won't you start off?
Sure. So AI and data analytics are absolutely huge in the space sector in two major ways. The first is we've been collecting observational data of the entire planet since the early 70s. And the longitudinal coverage of that data, the temporal and the detail, has only gotten better over time, to the point now where we're generating more data about the surface of the Earth and what's going on, even in the upper atmosphere, honestly, than we know what to do with. And this is where you're getting projects within Microsoft, Amazon, and a few other places on creating what they call a digital twin of the entire planet. And that being kept up to date on a minute by minute, hour by hour basis, with the ability to be able to run simulations on the planet, see if I do this, what happens to the planet. And that has a lot to do. On the other hand, control systems, satellites, anything you put out in space, generally you don't have a human being on board to be able to help out with things. And so you're using AI to be able to leave some of the decision-making up to those remote spacecraft, especially for anything beyond low Earth orbit, because the length of time for a signal to get to the spacecraft may end up being too late. So we're using a lot of AI to outsource decision-making to the actual hardware itself.
I see that Jamil is back. So Jamil, can you start this panel discussion?
Yes.
And then I'm gonna try to hunt down Avi. So thanks so much.
Thanks. I thought we were on at 3, so my apologies, Marty. Thank you for the intro. And I see Darrell and Michael already introduced themselves. It's a pleasure to be on the panel with you too. I've been very impressed with their conversations, and it's really an honor and a pleasure for me. So the first question I want to start with, since you introduced yourself, is, Deeptech, AI, machine learning, space, talk about, that's a broad area, right? So please describe what your specific niche is, what makes your position, unique, and then what value add you could be for family offices who are looking to enter the space.
Darrell, why don't you go first?
Oh, absolutely. So when you start to think, I've been involved with AI technology and blockchain technology, mainly AI, since 2007. And I think that a lot of times family offices, what I found is that they're more longer term investors. I guess they're more, I would say that they're more patient investors than your standard VCs. Not to say that all VCs are not impatient, I'm not trying to apply that. But when you're looking at investing in a company that is involving blockchain or AI technology, you have to look at to see what is the problem that they're looking to solve, how big is that particular problem in the industry, and have they given thought to the quality of the application that they're building. Sometimes I'll talk to folks about precision and recall, and when you're dealing with semantic technology, and anything less than 97% as far as accuracy on precision and recall, it's a non-starter, which means that writing these algorithms, it takes people who are very bright, very sophisticated, and who are really trying to get to that 100%, which means that the application, the closer you're to 100% with the precision and recall of your algorithms, the greater opportunity that the business is going to have. Because the one thing that you don't want, and I've launched quite a few products utilizing AI, is that you don't want the user to have a bad experience. Because if the user has a bad experience, it's like a restaurant. You don't give a restaurant two chances at a bad meal. They get one chance. If you have a bad meal, you're not going back. So I think it's important for the family offices to really understand who within the company is driving the technology, but also what is the CEO's role in regards to commercializing the product, in regards to how they're going to go to market, and realistically giving you realistic revenue forecasts based upon what they're seeing in the macroeconomics that is what's going on in the industry.
Got it. Avi, welcome. So I just want to, before I have Michael answer that question, I just want to have you introduce yourself. What is your background, and is it a logical background to what you do now?
So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and glad to be here. My name is Avi Sarma. So my background is finance. I went to business school undergrad at Wharton Business School, and then I spent a few years working at a hedge fund in New York before I spent time working with a lot of different social entrepreneurs and family offices in the field of impact investing. So everything from wastewater treatment projects to food tech and a variety of things globally. And now I run a global early stage venture capital company. We've made now about 50 investments into companies that are advancing dignity through their business models and making the world a little happier. So everything from education to health to mental wellness, food and agriculture, deep technology, financial services. So yeah, my background I think has really prepared me. You've been able to see a lot of opportunity and space in the world for applying technology, the emerging technologies to advance dignity.
Great, thank you. So we'll continue with the question I'll ask Michael is, please describe your specific niche, what makes your position, unique, and how you can help family offices.
Sure. Our position within the space sector is goes back to the reason that Stephen Jorgensen, our founder, and myself formed the firm, which was we saw a lot of venture capital funds not really able to do the deep due diligence on the market structure, competitive analysis, and everything within the space sector. And we saw a lot of good companies not actually being able to raise funds that we thought they should have been able to. And it all came down to sector specific knowledge. And part of that sector specific knowledge is also the personal relationships that came out of that. So understanding reputations, who to trust, who not to, things like that. And so our niche is really around the combination of understanding the nuts and bolts of the space sector, but also the other half of the firm being very finance focused. Half of our team are recovering hedge fund managers, people from the finance world, and the other half are space nuts. We have some former astronauts, biotech scientists, people from the DoD, and we're both teaching each other about the other's disciplines. And so it's becoming a very interdisciplinary group. You go back to the question of history and what prepared us for that. I actually started out in the technology sector. Yes, I am a recovering engineer. I try to deny it these days, but it still sneaks out from time to time. But started out in the internet sector in the 90s, but transitioned over to the space sector in the early 2000s when I joined one of the first vertical takeoff, vertical landing launch companies back in 2004. I did that for about 8 years and then decided it was time to go. This was about 2008 when the crisis happened. Left that, did an MBA, and then decided to head straight into finance and started work at a venture fund down in Atlanta, where I lived at the time. But started looking at the space sector as finally becoming investable, and that my engineering as well as finance together really prepared me for this sector because it's growing. You have to do the technical due diligence, but you have to do it fast. The hard part where you need to spend your time on, as I said, is the market. And that's where my finance, market structure, competitive analysis, and all that kind of stuff comes into play. So where we help family offices is navigate that. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of people out trying to raise money, and where we can help family offices, whether they want to find a fund to work with, they want to find co-investments that are later stage that they can trust, or they just want some advice. I run a 2-hour show on Clubhouse answering just general space finance questions. And we get family offices and individual investors coming in asking questions all the time. Happy to answer those. You do not have to be an LP for us to help you out from making a mistake. So just let us know.
Great, thank you. Avi?
So the question is, how do we help family office, and what is our particular niche? Yeah,
correct.
So for us, I think, you know, we are very focused on identifying large markets, whether that be consumer markets like food and agriculture, or healthcare or mental wellness, and applying deep technology, data, you know, analytics, you know, and various kind of new platforms to, you know, essentially our focus is on applying technology to kind of empower people, and to as a core element of the approach. So we're very much focused on going into different markets where we see inefficiencies, and we then, both in terms of, you know, kind of structural and business elements, but then also in terms of developing specific technology, you know, around new kinds of models and approaches. You know, that's where the two things blend. So a few examples are, you know, kind of in the food technology space. We're using data and kind of new machine learning algorithms to provide working capital loans to farmers in Brazil. So that's an example of a very large market, very underserved, especially for small and medium farmers. And it allows us to look at everything from supply chain to kind of, you know, consumer credit, all of those things with new kind of, you know, modeling approaches. And we partner with sometimes, you know, very large existing industry players in these startups. So our focus as far as providing capital is that we kind of bridge that early stage kind of risk for investors. A lot of times we come in very early around kind of presentation stage, ideation. We help with the creation of the model, the platform, you know, almost serving, you know, as a kind of a founding team member and board member, and especially in some emerging markets, it's very important to de-risk the investment. So we've done that now kind of in various markets in the world, and we'll partner with both local family offices and also international investors, co-investors at the right stage. A lot of times we'll partner with local family offices first, bring them in, you know, and kind of create a you know, a success story, a best practice, and then we kind of raise capital later down the road to scale. So I think what we bring to family offices in our network, we have quite a few co-investors that are leading families in different regions. We bring them kind of ready-made deals and applications of technology that are proven that they can understand with a market focus from a business standpoint. And then we bring that to them, and then they can participate with us. You know, we have a very flexible capital structure in the Isle of Man. That's where our vehicle is based. So we can kind of create SPVs and bring in partners fairly easily into deals. And we've done that dozens of times. So that's kind of how we bring these projects to our partners.
Great, thank you. So one of the things that I'm assuming, right, is that the application of your technologies doesn't just occur in a silo, right? Space isn't just confined to space. You know, how, you know, when you're looking at the supply chain from the start from the cradle to grave, I guess what they say, how is the implementation of your specific, you know, technologies that you guys are working on or investing in, how does application impact both upstream and downstream users, you know, so it isn't built in a silo?
That's one of the things that we have to spend a lot of time looking at in the space sector. Is this is a new sector, and there's a lot of people that came out of the previous aerospace supply chain, where generally you only have one what we call ultimate customer. It was probably either Boeing, Lockheed, or Northrop Grumman. And it's because of that, some of the companies that sell into the supply chain are not used to actually real commercial applications in the upstream. And so they're not able to create any cost efficiencies. Acquisitions in those spaces are maybe 1.5, maybe 2x revenue. So there's not a lot of investment opportunities. These are usually family-run businesses. And there's a lot of change going on right now. There are some opportunities in private equity roll-ups of some of these companies, but those are proving to be very difficult because you have to re-engineer these companies from scratch. On the downstream side, you have to do a company has to do a lot of education on the capabilities to be able to sell outside the space sector. So it's fairly easy to go to either NASA or DoD and say, I want to build an Earth observation satellite. And they go, yeah, we get that all day long. We're ready to buy. Let's go. If you're trying to sell commercialized weather forecasting, which is actually a thing. There are commercial weather companies out there with their own weather radar satellites that do sometimes better than even NOAA does. Educating their customers and their customers about the capabilities makes for sales cycles to be fairly long. And that's one of the challenges, is educating the non-space sectors about the capabilities and packaging those capabilities into something that solves non-spacey, non-science fiction-y kind of problems. We're doing that, but it's an education process we have to go through.
Darrell, what do you see?
What I find is that when I'm advising my clients who are looking at a particular investment is, and I think what Avi said is just so true, is how do you de-risk the potential investment that you're looking at? Sometimes they fall in love with the founder, if you will, but the founder hasn't really thought about the commercialization of the product, good, or service, mainly the application that they built. And again, getting back to what problem is it solving, and how big is that problem, which means, okay, what is the market willing to pay for it, and where does it fall along that Rogers curve in regards to the early adopters, the innovators, and the laggards. So I spend a lot of time guiding them through this thought process and getting them to understand the technology in layman's terms, if you will. Because a lot of times what I find is that sometimes these founders, they're very bright people, but they've fallen in love with their application, and everything is easy. But guess what? Life is hard. Technology is hard, and that I get very skeptical when I hear someone say, "Oh yeah, it's real simple, it's real easy." No, it isn't. When you're looking to do very sophisticated things with blockchain and AI, it requires deep thought, and again, very bright IT folks, very technicians, data scientists.
Great, thank you. Avi.
Yeah, I think in addition to what the others have said, one approach that I found very successful is the idea of having kind of an innovation customer along the journey with companies, because you do need kind of these visionary founders a lot of times with truly disruptive technologies. We've invested in some game-changing robotics companies with space application, but other applications as well. It's very hard to, as others have said, it's very hard sometimes to kind of explain the benefits and sell the benefits of a particular technology before it's actually in the market. So you kind of get into a catch-22. So finding a champion at a very large company that can come along the journey with you at early stages. We've done this now with a global top 50 company with a kind of AI insight, mining company for a research application. Having that commercial thought in everything from design to use to feedback and kind of bringing that industry advisory panel together, we found very important. I think also, having the right balance of investors around the table to kind of check the impulses of founders is very important. Understanding sometimes the journey of taking a product to market. it's sometimes building it all at once is not, the whole vision is not the actual solution. You can take things piecemeal. You can bring things in stages. Looking at the spending at early stages, I think, is important. So those are some of the things that I've learned, to bring in very strong co-investors. I have certain funds that I like to bring at early stage that trust me, who bring kind of an institutional credibility in evaluating early stage projects and putting in place some of the controls and milestones and things like that. So that helps me because we don't have as institutional a structure. So that's on the investor piece. But yeah, and just understanding that the journey to take these things to market takes time. Everybody thinks that the vision is just going to take off, but there's a lot of education that has to happen. Whether you're selling into a corporate environment or to consumers, a lot of times there's a lot of education, and things can kind of take off, at a time where they hopefully will take off sometime, but I think there needs to be patience because it's not always predictable about when that, inflection point will be reached with something. So those are the kind of considerations I think that are important. Patient capital, I think, is incredibly important for early stage. We've been on 6-year journeys with companies before we, really see that inflection point. So, yeah.
I just like to build on what Ivy said in regards to patient capital, is that if you set the performance metrics and you can measure it, that gives the investor, the family office, more comfort, if you will, if folks are meeting their particular milestones, or if there's a blip in the milestone, what happened there. That type of transparency and communication goes a long way to providing more comfort and more information to the investor. Investors, they just become more, they feel that the founders become more credible, if you will.
So I wanted to follow up on that. Both of you said that, mentioned that it's complicated. It's not easy. People want to exit now instead of being patient, and co-investment, right? If you took those together, how can VCs and family offices help, drive these new technologies, these companies, help them build their applications and their process of going forward?
Who would you like to kick off?
You kick off?
Okay, I'm happy to.
Great.
Yeah, I think specifically family offices, since that's the focus here. I think there's a significant potential if you can balance the risk appropriately, because patient capital is required for a lot of times. A lot of times family offices come with very large family businesses, behind them. So there's a lot of potential for that co-innovation approach. I've seen that works well. So definitely, having the longer term view, I think is something very beneficial to a startup at an early stage. I think that there's this kind of ethos that's come out of Silicon Valley that rounds need to be bigger and faster, and companies need to grow in a certain way and look a certain way, which it sounds really good. And certainly, I think we all probably are surrounded by these instant success stories, but actually great businesses can be built around disruptive technology that can take a long time. And it can look different than, they can look very different than like the Uber for X or the Stripe for Y kind of thing. So I think that a lot of times families, I find that we have a private capital base of quite a few different private families. They understand that businesses take a long time and they have a generational approach to things. So that I do think for the right entrepreneurs, it can kind of be a good marriage. So yeah, and I think and I think there's a different kind of skill set of it, that they bring to the table. So that's my thinking on it.
I have to agree because we've got a fair number of crypto related families that's where they made their money, and they understand the transformational nature of certain technologies, but you have to be there. You have to be patient with them. But when things take off, you also have to be aggressive with them. and being able to prepare for and look for those market signals. I have, several friends that have been involved in crypto since the, Satoshi Son's paper came out that early. And so it's very, everybody was wondering whether or not they were crazy for buying Bitcoin when it was, essentially a penny or, that kind of level. At the same time, we have another family that's involved in logistics. And so space has a lot of logistical problems to it, and they really understand those. So in a lot of cases, our family offices, because they have experience with building businesses, generally, they bring skill sets that we can bring into some of the companies that we've invested in and say, you should talk to these guys. They actually have gone through this before. They can help you understand where to go. One of the other interesting things that I've seen work in the past is families often have various, especially, when you're second and third generation with the family office, you have large numbers of descendants that are looking for jobs in the technology sector. And just putting in a plug for the space sector, everybody's hiring. We need employees badly. Everything from lawyers to managers, project managers, leaders, everything. So we actually do go out to a lot of our family offices and ask them, do you have anybody looking for a job? Because we're hiring.
That's good to know. Darrell.
So yeah, so when you look at where technology has been, where it's going, and Bitcoin is a very good example that started back in 2008 and has grown, and now we're seeing that the legislators are now talking about, okay, so how do we bring stability to, or legislation to these technologies that's going to allow it to flourish even further. And you see that's taken like 15 years. So when you're talking to a family office about investment, they're very long-term investors, as we all have discussed here. But it gets down to them understanding the technology. When you think about deep tech takes a lot of time to come to fruition. Deep tech solves very, very sophisticated problems, but I feel that if you can articulate how difficult the issue is and what the problem is, and show a critical path to the family office and how this particular technology is going to work towards that. And then of course you're establishing those milestones and they're meeting those milestones. It again, it gives the family office a degree of comfort out there. And there's a lot of examples that we have seen, that we have witnessed about new technology that is just taking time for it to come to fruition. I mean, if you look at the streaming services, HBO, which was in the leader back in 2011, ignored it. And now HBO, now they got a streaming service, but not before Netflix really established himself as a major powerhouse. One other example I love to share is that I always ask the audience who knows the name Telerate. Now, people in the financial markets who have been in financial markets, they'll know Telerate, but nobody else does. But everybody knows Bloomberg. Well, prior to Bloomberg coming on board, Telerate had 100% of the marketplace. And people ask the question, why does News Corp own the Wall Street Journal? The reason is that the Bancroft family decided to bail out after the Telerate cost them like $2.5 billion in losses. So, but that's where a major corporation like Telerate ignored technology that was right in front of them. And Bloomberg took it over. So it's understanding where's the technology, what is the competitive technologies, and what are the, I guess, the macroeconomics of looking at the different performance metrics of a current technology versus the new technology. And when you start to see that those numbers, or one number is going down, another number is going up, well, that's a good time to hit the marketplace.
Great. So, go ahead.
I have actually a quick question for both Avi and Darrell. When to that specific point, how much do you do road mapping for where you think the various sectors are going to be at in the future? We do a lot of
guys,
that.
we have a couple more minutes. Keep on
Sure,
going.
go ahead.
So Michael, the reason why I'm laughing because I do these roadmaps and I laugh at them a year or two later because even though I put a lot of thought into it, I put my heart and soul on. I'm on my patio on a Sunday afternoon, telling my wife, "Yeah, I think I got it." I'm always dead wrong. But am I in the ballpark? Yes. Am I in the right seat? No.
Yeah, just as a quick add on to that, the only thing I have come to know about my best plans is that they're always wrong. So basically I just kind of look at the kind of the risks and the infrastructure around it, ecosystem, so that as the plan kind of goes, we can just be on an upward trajectory, you know, even if there are some pit stops and things.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. So we have a couple minutes left. Marty, would we have any additional question from you? You still there? No. All right. So I have one more. First of all, thank you very. Oh, he's back on. Marty, would you have any?
No,
additional-
I think you're good. I mean, these are fascinating times, and again, I just think the space program and the direction you guys are going is a huge opportunity. And I know I keep on calling it green fields, but I think it's a one big green fields aspect, and there'll probably be things learned from this program which will have application on Terran soil. So you know, so keep on going. One more
Great.
question.
Awesome. So this is a question I want to ask because, you know, I've read all the books, you know, Start With Why, you know, Simon Sinek stuff, right? In traditional finance, traditional world, companies focused on products and services and just on the products and services and what they offered, right? But you're in, you know, Deeptech, which is new, innovative, you know, how big of a role does the purpose of these founders have behind it, you know, moving forward? And what avenues, in addition to just building a product and service, do you see as being important? Is it social capital, or how is it, and how is it playing out? Start, Avi.
Yeah, so for me, it's almost everything. You know, like when I'm partnering with a founder, I look at it as a 10-year plus journey. And so the purpose of that founder, and to me, like a lot of times with these innovative technologies, if you get it right, they have impact just walking out the door. So you don't have to look at it as like an impact investment in order for it to be incredibly impactful. You know, so we have companies that have taken journeys now to take containers and put farms inside of them with, you know, LED technology and hydroponics, and bringing that to market and looking at partnerships with big traditional players. And you know, maybe one day they will be on Mars, you know. So that's the thing is that we do need to transform the food system. So the ethos of the entrepreneur for me is very important across anything. And you know, even some businesses that are you know, even some businesses that sometimes, you know, can fail, you know, it's good to be partnered with the right people, because that is a risk of the journey, hopefully not too often. But if the right purpose is there and the right intent there, usually things come right. So yeah, the purpose is incredibly important for me, the vision and everything of the founder in what we do.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I agree with Avi. The mission to try to improve mankind is very important. I'm very heavily involved in scholarly research, having worked at Elsevier in a previous role. It's important that the company has a respect for mankind, humanity, and for our planet. Michael, I don't mean any offense, but I get kind of offended when we're talking about going to another planet, if you will, but meanwhile we're messing up our planet. And I think, I mean, I love, my sister works at NASA, Goddard, and I love space, but let's not destroy what we have. Let's try to do the best we can for our Earth and our planet. And the projects I take on, they're the ones that I'm very passionate about, and the ones that are destructive, I don't get involved in. I choose not to be involved in. Oh, one other thing I want to mention is something that's very important that I work with the folks that I work with is get them to understand the intellectual capital value. That's a whole nother discussion we can have. I'm doing a whole series about that on my radio podcast about intellectual capital. And that's something that I think is an opportunity for investors to understand and to look at as well.
Yeah, just to the original question that just a quick rejoinder with Darrell there. We actually dig into what the entrepreneur, what their vision is, because sometimes, especially in the space sector and even other deep tech areas, they're almost embarrassed to actually say what their long-term goals actually are, because they don't think that you would believe them. And so one of the things that we spend some time doing is, okay, we know you're talking about this particular product, but I really, really want to know what your long-term vision is, to make sure I know where you are going aligns with what I think you're doing with this particular technology. We have run into, companies that say, yeah, I'm doing this because I want to be able to get enough money from this to go do that. And if this and that are very different, it's kind of causes problems. But when those two things align, you get a company and a company culture that are very dedicated to the long-term growth of the company. And that's what we really look for. In a lot of cases, I've seen entrepreneurs scale their company down to what they think they can raise versus what they think the actual final opportunity might be. And unless you know what that final opportunity is, you may not know what you're investing in. But finally, back to Darrell, we should chat offline one day about all the opportunities that the space has for monitoring climate change. For example, we're an investor in New Age Meats, which is a stem cell-based meat company to get rid of the entire livestock supply chain and actually do better food than we're having now. So yeah, space will save the earth.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.